Welcome back, everyone. Of course, again, I Run Far Live here at the Coffee Bar in Squaw. I'm here with Megan Hicks and the one and only Stephanie Violett. Stephanie is, of course, a three-time finisher of this race and the 2014 champion of Western States 100. She's our first former champion who we're speaking with. So my first question for those of us who will never win this race, what's it like to be the Western States champ? And looking back, what do you remember from that day, and what has it meant to you to be the champion?
Well, that win meant a lot to me. It was my first 100-mile race, and the Western States in general just means a lot to me, so it was kind of like double. I have a hard time putting into words what that meant to me, but coming through on the track, I felt like I was floating. It was literally one of the coolest things I've ever done. Leading up to the track, I don't remember that much. Honestly, it's kind of a blur. I know there were some high points, some low points, kind of getting through Green Gate and not knowing what my body was going to do the last 20 miles. It was a lot of surreal, like what am I doing? But really cool. And coming back, it's just been, I haven't quite performed that well, but it's still, every finish almost means that much to me. I love this race.
Yeah.
I loved seeing how, last year's race obviously wasn't your dream race.
Yeah.
But I loved seeing the emotion and just that emotional component of, it's just so obvious on you at the finish line and several different points on the course. Can you, even when you don't have your best race, it seems like there's a lot of emotional, positive energy in there.
There is. I'm almost more proud of last year than I was of the year I finished, or the year I won. I just think I don't quit. And so I knew, there was no way I was going to quit. It was just a matter of working through it. And it got really hard, but the feeling is still the same when you cross the finish line. And I think that's something that's been important to me, is to know when I get into a situation where things are totally falling apart, just to not give up. That's been kind of my motto to get me through these races, and it's really meaningful, really emotional.
So kind of in the same vein, after you won, you got third the next year in 2015. Then you had an injury which kept you out for a year or more, if my memory is accurate there. And since then, in hundreds, you've kind of had a little bit of adversity.
That's a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, well, just as an outside observer, obviously you have the potential to win any race that you're in. And the last couple hundreds have been, I think, a little bit challenging for you. Is it just bad luck, or was it a return from injury and just gaining strength again, or is there something specific that you might attribute it to that you've been working on?
I think it's a combo. I think I had a little bad luck, but also I wasn't super confident. So coming back, I was, I just didn't trust my body. I didn't trust my instincts with fueling and pacing, so I was just not quite a confident runner again. And so I think last year I did have a lot of trouble with the hundreds, and there's a bit of a learning curve. I feel like I got back into it and realized things like, I'm embarrassed to admit this because I know a lot. I do nutrition, but I made some nutrition errors in both my hundreds. So I was just relearning that, oh my gosh, you gotta rethink this. You're starting not from zero, but I had been so comfortable with knowing what to do that when I finally got back into racing, I had to remember those things again. So I think I have now. I've been really thinking about it. And then another thing that I think really impacted me last year was the year of injury. I cross-trained as much as I could, and I used up a lot of mental energy getting through that. So when I got to the start line of Western States last year, I was pretty burned out mentally, because I'd just been fighting for so long. And I think, hindsight, I don't know what I would have done differently, but it was pretty tough to get there and just feel like I had already given so much.
To even be healthy. So this year you feel like more yourself and more energetic.
I do. I'm psyched. Yeah. And from a training standpoint, it's a lot easier when you're not injured, to be able to just go.
It's a good lesson.
Go through the motions and enjoy it.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that nutrition part, because you are a nutritionist, and the nutrition is one of the hardest nuts to crack. Running ultras in general, let alone running the 100-mile distance. What have you learned and relearned? Yeah, like there's got to be like an awesome knowledge drop right there.
Yeah, I've learned that even if you think you have your system down, it changes depending on the heat, depending on the time of year. So I think everyone has like a range they fall into, and it's not a simple equation. So that's one thing I had to remember, like, okay, even though this formula worked in this race it might be slightly different. So having that ability to adapt. And then also, this is my big takeaway from last year. I got so confident in my fueling. I'm like, I know how to do it. I know how to take gels. And so when I would train, I would go out with like peanut butter and jelly sandwich and like, real food because it tastes better. Who wants to eat a gel? But then I got into the races and I was like, oh my gosh, my body's rejecting these things. Like I couldn't eat blocks, I couldn't eat gels. And so I realized like, oh yeah, you need to practice with race food. So that was a good reminder to me that you want to use some of your long runs to mimic what you want to do in a race, because otherwise it's like it doesn't work.
So in terms of Western States on Saturday, knowing or like relearning that fact that we all have these ranges of what's acceptable and the conditions for keeping your stomach going are really like not ideal here in Western States.
Yeah.
What have you like given yourself a plan A and then a plan B, or
sort of, yeah, it's plan A, and for me the thing that helps me fuel the most is to stay cool. And so that's kind of like, that goes along with my nutrition plan. I've been really bad in the past just telling my crew, I don't want ice, I don't want water, because I just don't want water on me, and it's so weird. So this year I'm like, if I fight it, just do it, just do it. I'm saying this out loud, so it's more for me to know. Stephanie, listen. So I think
them douse you.
yeah, I think that's going to help me. But then I also know that I have a plan based on the heat, but as it gets warmer, that plan is going to be adaptable. So I'm going to gravitate more towards liquids later in the day when I can't get gels down. And so my crew knows also, I have some options, but I don't have like 20 options, because I've done that before too. And then I come in and they've got like, do you want this? I'm like, too many decisions. So keep it simple. That's one of my themes. And I have 3 choices.
Okay.
Take one.
So transitioning to your preparation for this year's race, you've done the Formidable 50K, which you won down in Auburn, kind of course specific. You did another race, a North Face race in Peru, I think it was. You won that race too. How do you feel generally coming into the race? Like, how has your training been, and how did you kind of use those races to prepare for this?
So being totally honest, Formidable was awesome. That was a really good, last year I didn't have the best race results. So Formidable was a good confidence booster. Like, okay, I feel great. 50Ks are tough for me, but I felt like I nailed it. So that was really great. And then I went to Peru for a North Face race, and
I think that was hard, huh?
Yeah, that's like a nice way to put it. It destroyed me. It was super hot. It started at 2 in the morning. It took me 13 hours to do an 80K, and so that was kind of unexpected. There was 10 finishers, so it crushed me in maybe not the best of ways. It showed me that I'm tough and I suffer, but I had to take a lot more recovery after that race. So I missed like Sonoma this year, which was a big bummer for me. That's one of my favorite races. But
for the wine or for the running?
Both. And just for the whole scene there, like seeing everyone. But hindsight, that might have been good, because it gave me some time to like recover and then have like a gradual build-up. So it's been a little bit non-traditional training leading into Western States, but I feel good about it in a weird way. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Dylan and I have a couple specific questions about your training. First of all, you put at least most of it on Strava, so it's publicly available that people can see what somebody like you does for your training. Your training included a lot of running, but also a lot of biking in the lead up. Can you talk about that strategy?
Yeah, so I come from a more multi-sport background, so I enjoy doing those activities. To me, it's not like forced cross training. And we have these windows in Bend in the fall and in the spring where the gravel riding is spectacular. So that was kind of one of my favorite things to do, was to take my gravel bike out and just explore. So that was part of it. The second part was I had a little bit of Achilles tendonitis in both sides, and so that was a way for me to kind of run but then let it heal. So that was part of it. And then I just do better with less miles, honestly. Like, I've learned this over the years that if I add in some cross training, I generally feel like I recover better and my body responds. So
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Another specific question as it pertains to your training. I noticed that you went out to Colorado Springs a few weeks ago to train with our mutual coach, Jason Koop. What was the thought behind that trip? Was it a specific kind of training camp, and what did you guys look to accomplish there?
Yeah, so it was great. It was a really hard training camp for me. So a couple things: the heat, and it was only 95 degrees, but it crippled me. So that was really good. And then the altitude, and then just getting on some tough trails. So it was honestly my hardest week of training, and not so much I was like putting in all these miles, but it was awesome.
So, but what was the thought behind it? Did Jason like reach out and say, hey, I want you to come and train here, or vice versa? Or what was the thought behind like getting together for a camp like that?
So it was kind of twofold. We had been talking quite a bit about, just training, and then also I came there to see, he had a PT there that I saw. And just long story short, I've had, like I said, I had Achilles tendonitis, and trying to figure out the underlying cause of that, which, just to share this, because I think it's fascinating, because I've seen a few PTs, but it seems like it's related to my vestibular,
what the hell is that?
So it's like your inner ear and like your balance. So it was really crazy. I get super car sick and I get nauseous at night when I'm running, and that's been my problem, like with UTMB. Remember, I saw you early on, and it was night, and I'm like, I'm nauseous already. So at night with the lights, I just get really sick.
Whoa.
And so she was like asking me all these questions, so we put two and two together because I can't balance on one foot, and she's like, you need to work in your vestibular control. So it was great for a number of reasons, and this is just good for anyone to know, because I don't think this is common knowledge that can happen, but it's easy to retrain.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
that is fascinating.
It's crazy. That was not what I was expecting.
Well, yeah, I want to look into that now. But maybe just last question in terms of strategy for Saturday.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about the race? Do you anticipate, going out conservatively because it's going to be quite warm in the afternoon? Or are you just going to kind of run your race by feel? Are you going to be keying off anybody in particular?
I'm definitely not keying off anyone. I'm going to run my race. I kind of think back to my first year, because I think I ran it the best, and I was terrified of the distance. And so the first 10 miles, I was really far back, and I was just like warming up, and it worked out really well later in the day. So I think the past couple years, I've felt a little more pressure just on myself, and this year I feel more removed from it. Maybe I'm just more mature about it, but I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm not as much in the spotlight. So I feel like this, like, okay, just do your thing. So I'm definitely not. You won't see me up the escarpment first. You probably won't see me getting into Robinson Flat near the front. I'm going to do my thing, take care of myself. I think staying cool is going to be more important for me to be able to run later in the day. So that's my strategy so far. And my crew is going to ice and douse me.
So if you see Stephanie Violett not like wetted down, throw some water at her. Right?
Call me out.
Taking all water.
Yes.
Well, we're so excited for you. I know I'm very excited to watch the women's race in general. I think it's going to be very, very interesting, very open, and it's great to have you here as a past champion. And good luck getting a second Cougar trophy this Saturday.
My Cougar's lonely.
Yeah.
It needs a friend.
I wish we could all say the same. That's a good problem to have. Round of applause, please, for Stephanie Violett.
if you
Drink more coffee.
spy under the table, Stephanie's got our brand new I Run Far Dry Max socks on.
They're really nice.
We literally just got them in the mail yesterday. Basically, when the Hayden Hawks sock was released from Dry Max, we loved that sock because it's got like the hot weather top to it, but it's got some cushioning on the bottom, which is really nice for ultra distance running, especially if you're not planning on having super wet feet. And so, yeah, we said Dry Max, we want the I Run Far sock to look like that. So, yeah, I haven't had one on my own feet yet, but Stephanie's got it.
They're nice. It's a good purchase.